Hello everyone, it's Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today, yes, we're looking at the Hoopa Regigigas Shuckle stall deck. I think it's powerful, and that's why I'm showing it. It has answers to a lot of decks in the format. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of these stalling archetypes, and don't really like to play them, but I have been playing it for a few hours today, and it's powerful, and it wins a lot of games. And you have, in this list, a good amount of outs for all sorts of different matchups. Quick note on this build, as opposed to the other build we saw do well at Roanoke, which was a Steelix Warlord build. I think this is a lot safer. There are more and more decks playing Let Loose, as well as Judge in their lists, to try and answer a lot of these Stage 2 variants that have started popping up in the format. Things like the ninetails Gardevoir, Decitails, and even the Meganium Swampert Greninja GX deck. And that naturally is really bad for the Steelix Warlord because they just have 120 hit point basics that can get knocked out very easily. Here, our walling Pokemon are just basics, so they are always just there from the offset. So we have a bit more survivability in the early turns against those awkward judges, where still we're not happy to see them, but we are at least promoting some more awkward Pokemon to begin with and don't simply get judged out of the game, because if this deck loses a game one, it either ties or loses because its own win condition is so slow. It does have multiple win conditions though. It has running your opponent out of cards, it has the unknown hand win condition, and we have energy to attack with, so we can technically take prizes with triple poison. So we have 3 win conditions in this deck, hilariously enough. So let's talk about the 60 cards itself and my decisions within it. So one of our 3 main walling Pokemon is this Hoopa. Scoundrel Guard is incredible, preventing all effects of attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's GX and EX. Straight out the gate, this is so frustrating to deal with for all sorts of different archetypes. Many of them in the format right now are reliant on GX attackers. Notably as well, we have resistance to Psychic, which is pretty good against things like non-GX Deoxys and Giratina. This resistance is very critical as well for keeping us out of range of those guys. We also have Regigigas in here. He is a backup walling Pokemon, 180 hit points on this one, difficult to take down in one shot, even more difficult when you add on the tool Ancient Crystal to him, reducing 30 damage done to him. So effectively a 210 hit point non-GX, lots to deal with. The main reason he's in here is for Naganadel. We cannot beat Naganadel just with an army of Hoopas. We need to have Regigigas with an Ancient Crystal on so that their continuous turning point attack is only ever doing 50 damage to us. And in those cases, we are going to be fine because we can get into our Lusamine Acerola loop and be very happy with that. Or the alternative is that they get baited into putting Blacephalons down into play, and that creates its own win condition by simply gusting it up a bunch, using things like Articuno's GX attack to run them out of energy, and use their big 2 retreat cost to lose themselves the game. So the Regigigas really does help out in that matchup for certain. The turning point turn, obviously very difficult to deal with. If they are running Naganadel GX, don't think it's going to be easy for us to win, but with this guy at least we have a chance. From there, Shuckle-GX is our 3rd walling Pokemon, Protective Shell. He can't take damage from Pokemon that have 2 or less energy attached to them. Really, really good stuff for you. Again, this is very good for things like Gramble. Lost March only plays 1 Super Boost, so once that's out of the way, he can hit the field quite happily. And again, just so annoying to get around. Notably, all 3 of our basics do have abilities, which is actually awkward for Weavile, so we have to be very careful about how we bench our guys against Weavile. Additionally, Muck is going to be a thing that a lot of Zoroark decks are playing, and that is going to be awkward for us. They obviously shut off all of our abilities, but the upside to Muck is that it has a hench retreat cost, and we can definitely prey on that as well. So multiple win conditions this deck has on offer. So as I mentioned, we can take prizes. We are playing a Rainbow as well as 1 Metal Energy that we can cycle with our Stadium Mount Coronet. So both of these attacks are spammable technically. Triple poison once during, it poisons your opponent and you put 3 counters in between turns. And yeah, against everything that isn't playing B-strings. And as I would also edge on caution against Zoroark decks, especially if it's Zoroark Decidueye, because you can allow them to Acerola and give themselves an extra bench space for more Decidueyes to build the board. And although we can beat Decidueye, the more Decidueye they actually get out in play, the worse for us. So not allowing your opponent Acerola and not doing it against Ultra Beast is critical, but against other decks, you actually can take 6 prizes against them just by continually poisoning them. And at the very least, it forces them to play more cards. It forces them to use their own Guzmas just to not lose prizes eventually in the game. And even just taking a prize here or there, if it's not our main win condition, it gets us access to those cards from our prizes, which we never usually are able to get, so that's always good for us. We also have the Wrap GX attack. Just as 40 for a colorless, and your opponent's active is paralyzed. This is actually a really big deal, because we're a Lusamine deck, and a lot of the time our heals come from Acerola, and we don't have infinite Acerolas, we have infinite thanks to Lusamine, and that's every other turn. So if you can buy yourself a turn where Shuckle's damaged, you're having to Lusamine back Acerola. If you can paralyze their active, maybe they can't knock out that Shuckle, and it can be actually very helpful for you. So do bear in mind Shuckle's attacks are very worth using in a lot of different situations if he is the main guy up front. From there, we have 4 very important one-of Pokemon as well. Oranguru, of course, has resource management. This is going to help us go infinite, and it means that we can beat other Oranguru players by being able to keep up with the amount of cards they can recycle. And eventually, we'll remove the important ones from our opponent by using the Girafarig as well. Get lost, putting 2 cards from your opponent's discard pile into the lost zone. This is the way that we can beat other people's Lusamine chain by lost zoning their Lusamines eventually. It's also very good at getting rid of some key pieces that they would otherwise recycle with Oranguru. Things like Guzmas, things like switch cards, so that we can eventually stall something so that they can't continually use Oranguru. That's pretty much the way that we're going to try and win. So yeah, very worth noting. Our other win condition, if we are up against Oranguru in a mirror style situation, there's 2 Orangurus, both in the active, both recycling cards, is going to be using Unknown Hand. We can use things like Looker and Steven's Resolve that we play in our deck to get up to that big 35 card hand, and simply use a Tate Liza or an Acerola plus Rainbow Energy combo to move our active out the way and announce hand for game. So I haven't done it yet, I haven't handed for game yet, but it is a win condition against decks that simply want to add in 1 Oranguru and think that they can beat Mill. They can't. We have enough answers in the deck thanks to this Unknown Hand, so do bear that in mind. The final Pokemon is this Articuno-GX as a 1 copy. We saw how great this was in the Zoro Control deck that we saw at the Latin American Internationals. Cold Crush again is the reason why it's in here. Discarding all energy from both active Pokemon. Very good against things like Bucephalon and anything else that you can trap if your opponent is trying to just aggressively attach a lot of energy to 1 Pokemon and just say that they're all in with that guy. You can Cold Crush them all back down in 1 foul swoop, which is really good for you at times. So let's move on to the item count. Lots of interesting stuff going on. One-of copy, and that's Rescue Stretcher, because you can recycle it with Oranguru, so then you can recycle Oranguru again. Very, very good indeed when you're in those sorts of situations. Additionally, it's just an extra of the most annoying Pokemon that you have. We have 3 copies of Hoopa, Regi, and Shuckle, so recycling the most important one if your opponent has started to take prizes against them is going to be very nice for you. Also protects you a little bit against prizing some of these pieces here and there. We are playing 2 copies of Countercatcher to gust up chunky things on your opponent's bench, which is obviously very good for you, whilst not using your support of a turn. Very beneficial. 3 copies of Enhanced Hammer, obviously a lot of special energy roaming around right now, getting them instantly off the board is great. 4 Crushings as well, just in generally very, very strong card for more energy removal. 4 Max Potions, as I said, those times where we can't Acerola, we'll try and do Max Potions on the turns we Lusamine instead, which is obviously very good for us. And in general, it's just more fast, rapid healing while you're setting up your board, going for Steven's Resolve into Steven's Resolve into Steven's Resolve, and then you have the full hand where you have to do everything. The Max Potions help you out in those early stages while you're building your hand into this sort of infinite Lusamine loop. 4 copies of Nest Ball. Whenever I've played Mill, I feel like a lost condition is simply just losing in the first 2 or 3 turns before you get your big hand going and you're in that massive Lusamine cycle with a big hand size. So having those 4 Nest Balls really helps you out, especially with Judge being so prevalent and Let Loose being around. I feel like it's not worth taking a risk and just maxing out these copies. If you wanted to add in just like a 4th Hooper over a Netball, I'm never going to hate you for that, but this is the most versatile because it gets the right one out in every single matchup, because they are different for different circumstances, obviously. 1 copy of Mount Coronet. Stadium bouncing, your opponent then can't knock out their own GX Pokemon to allow themselves B-strings if they play their own Shrine of Punishments, which has sometimes happened. It also means that you can infinitely loop your metal energy, so we only need to play one metal, one rainbow in the deck. The rainbow counts for Cold Crush, and the one metal can do all of Shuckle's attacks, Girafarig and Oranguru, using Get Lost and Resource Management. So that's all you need. Because you can Lusamine mount Coronet, you have infinite 1 energy, which is all we need. Great. Onto the supporters, the main bulk of the deck, definitely the main stuff here. A couple of important one-offs. I mentioned Tate Liza, very important for the unknown hand aspect of the deck, so that you can actually eventually announce hand for game, which is always cool. It's also a shuffle effect, so we have this plus Cynthia for shuffle effects, because there are times where we will oftentimes have to recycle our hand because we haven't run our opponent out of cards yet, but we have no cards in our own deck. They're all in our hand, so we'll have to use Tate Liza in those cases if Cynthia's prized. But we also have 1 copy of Cynthia. For, again, this is just better than Tate Liza in that situation where you have no deck cards and you need to recycle yourself. But I don't want to play more copies than this because I think it's anti-synergistic with the deck. Because we're playing a mainly Steven's Resolve based engine, I don't like shuffle draw. I think it's better to just accumulate a hand rather than keep refreshing it. Because we have answers to stuff, we never really reduce our hand size that much. So I found that using 3 copies of Looker way stronger. So just 1 copy of Cynthia there. Next up, we have Faber. You get to choose a tool or special energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon or Stadium and put it straight into the Lost Zone. Really, really nice. Obviously great against, again, Zoroark decks playing Oranguru. You can eventually get rid of every single one of the energy for good because it's in the Lost Zone, so people can't get it back. Additionally, you don't have to pay cards like Plumeria does, so it's a little bit cheaper, more effective against special energy cards in general. Also good at getting rid of, again, more stadium cards against opponents. If we're in mirror matches, you can get rid of your opponent's Mount Coronet for good, and then they can't recycle their 1 energy, and then they can't resource management the whole time. So Faber, very, very cute one of in all sorts of different situations. Very good card for this deck. We have 1 copy of Guzma in addition to our 2 counter catchers. Again, stalling is a big part of this archetype, so that's going to be important to recycle with our good old Lusamine. And that's it for the 1-ofs. Let's go on to the 2-ofs, I guess. I like playing 2 copies of Gladion. I think our prizes are so inaccessible, and oftentimes we play so many important 1-ofs, and even our 4-ofs are really important to recycle as well. We play 4 copies for a reason. We don't just want to see them early. We want to use all 4 copies in the case of things like Max Potion. So 2 copies of Gladion, I think, does protect us quite a bit against those sorts of awkward prizing moments. Then we're going to play 2 copies of Mars. Mars is one of these cards, once you finally run them out of energy, they're going out with a whimper, but still playing the game, and they haven't conceded. You can just do this. You draw 2, remove discard 1 from them. Draw 2, discard 1 from them. Lusamine, discard 2, draw 1 from them. Very, very slow process, but you will eventually run them out of cards. This is the quote-unquote mill aspect of the deck by actually removing stuff from them. And it's very much a late-game style thing once they've actually stopped doing stuff against you. If you have a free turn here and there, you're usually Lusamining back stuff rather than using Mars. But once they've finally run out of stuff, you'll start using Mars and run them out of cards. Then we have 2 copies of... Oh, and Mars can just draw cards in general, so it's not the worst thing just to have 2 copies of rather than 1. 2 copies of Plumeria. Obviously removing basic energy cards, which Faber can't do. Guaranteed. Obviously very good for us. We do have to pay by discarding 2 cards of our own, but oftentimes you'll get rid of supporter cards that you don't need at that time, so that you can eventually, once they're out of stuff, Lusamine back these supporter cards. So effectively you're paying nothing, but it's a 2 up front, and eventually you'll get it back. It's a small loan of $1 million, if you will. From there, we have 2 copies of Team Skull Grunt, another way that we can try and remove cards from our opponent. This is a great way to scout as well, to see what your opponent has. Sometimes you can Skull Grunt, see that they have a judge in their hand. You can play a few more cards down and protect yourself from that. But if we catch energy at the right time, it's obviously very good. There's the Greninja Swampert Meganium deck, where you can sometimes just free win by Skull Grunting at the right time. Obviously, their main cycle is to never deck out by just cycling a Greninja every time and using Hay Slash. The way to beat them, especially now that a build has come out with Lusamine, you have to use Get Lost to get rid of Lusamines and Guzmas, so then they run out of switch cards, and then finally you'll be able to trap a Meganium or Swampert, and then they have to attack with one of those guys, and you have to then remove that 1 energy and win the game. That's all you need to do. But until you get that Get Lost off, Skull Grunt is pretty much like your early game win condition, just to like randomly win at times. And in general, it's just a very good card to fire off and remove from people, especially if you're stalling something in the active. It can be very good to combine it with a hammer or something like that. Very, very awkward. Onto the 3-ofs. 3 copies of Acerola. Obviously, it's our main healing supporter card, so looping this with Lusamine is obviously important. 3 copies of Looker. I prefer this to just playing 4 straight up copies of Cynthia. I think this synergizes better with the deck. Obviously, it synergizes with Oranguru as well, so you can put the 3 to the bottom and then draw them straight out again. So that's a pretty nice card over just something like a How. Obviously, it's one of our lowest priority supporter cards because it's not disrupting and it's not as good as Steven's Resolve. But it's, in my opinion, better than a Cynthia because we are eventually trying to accumulate a hand rather than just Cynthia, hope that we get like Steven's Lusamine. I'd rather just keep trying to get the full package all in one hand. So I think Looker is a better choice than just having more Cynthias in here. Although it's potentially a little bit weaker in the early turns. That's why we're maxing out things like Nest Ball, and we have those 12 basics to fall back on. From there, 3 copies of Lusamine. Obviously huge for the deck. You'll use this card so often in every game. You'll be getting back a Lusamine plus a supporter card of your choice, and it's whatever one you need in the right situation. And finally, 4 copies of Steven's Resolve, an amazing card for these decks. You get to search your deck for any 3, put them into your hand, shuffle your deck, and your turn ends. It's effectively using a magical ribbon, but we don't have the downside of being Sylveon. We have a lot more space in our deck because we don't need to play 12 or 13 basic energy cards, so we can have more disruption than a Sylveon player. Also, our walls are more annoying than a Sylveon. Some decks can simply get through Sylveon quite happily, and Steven's Resolve is sort of our get out of jail free card for that. Obviously, great. Usually, you will, if you Stevens early, you will then Stevens again the next turn. You almost use it like Cyrus's Conspiracy. You get Steven from your Steven to Steven's next turn, build up your hand. You normally use like double Steven or triple Steven, depending on how bad your opening hands are, as early as you can to then get yourself into that Lusamine loop. Really, really insane supporter card, very good for the deck. Then we move on to our 2 tools, the Ancient Crystals. I've already mentioned how important this is for Regigigas specifically against Naganadel, for pushing you out of range, putting you into a 5-shot, which is hilarious. And at the same time, just more bulk on your Regigigas is fine. It's the most vanilla wall, so I think it's the one that's worth putting a tool on, whereas something like a Choice Helmet, yes, you could put it on a Shuckle, obviously not relevant on a Hoopa unless they've got a muck down anyway, in which case you'll just prefer to use a Regigigas. So I think it's better than just playing Choice Helmet, because there are obviously non-GXs out there right now that this covers. Then we're going to have 1 copy of Rainbow Energy, obviously for the Cold Crush GX, and 1 copy of that Metal Energy that we can recycle with Mount Coronet to have potentially infinite attacks as long as our stadium doesn't get fabbed away, because we can Lusamine it back. So that is pretty much the list. I don't really want to talk about any other additions to the deck. I think counts are just the main question mark here. I don't think there's too much to debate in terms of cards that I'm not playing. I think we've just about snuck it all in there and have, in theory, the answers for most things. I think our worst matchups include Blacephalon that does play Naganadel GX, as well as Magcargo. Magcargo is a bad matchup, and Malamar builds are awkward but definitely winnable. If they only play 1 Dawnwings Necrozma, which is most of the decks, you still have a good win condition against them, but it's not easy. So let's jump into 1 game. I'm not going to play more because it's going to bore me to hell. Unless people start conceding against me. And our opening hand is trash, but we have max potions to fall back on. And we are up against definitely a ninetails build. Is it going to be Gardevoir? Gardevoir is a long, long grind. They play Solgaleo, which can recycle their energy cards. They have Twilight GX that can recycle all sorts of things. So it's a long old slog trying to beat a Gardevoir ninetails, but we can do it. And let's see what they're going to do. It's Lele up front. Oftentimes the win condition involves eventually stalling out a Swampert that has a 3 retreat cost. Alternatively, a ninetails that's a 2 retreat cost is also something we can try and stall. Hoopa, definitely a good wall in this matchup. Shuckle, terrible, obviously. Regigigas, yeah, not the best. Hoopa's definitely going to be the thing we look for the most here. They're going to get themselves Ditto, Vulpix, Mudkip. Pretty standard stuff here. We don't have anything good going on. No Stevens right now. Not much that we can try and do to disrupt the opponent. Just a bunch of heal cards. Stevens definitely a big card for this deck. Gave it a real breath of life. Made it compete with Sylveon, at the very least, in consistency. They're going to attach to the Mudkip. We're going to try and Crushing Hammer. And we'll pass. Oh, what fun we're about to have. Yeah, this is a really... This is like one of the longest matchups you can have. I think this and the Greninja Meganium Swampert are actually some really long grindy matchups. But every matchup is long and grindy, but these are the ones that you can lose if you don't play well. Malamars can also be awkward, obviously. Alright, they're going to get their stuff rolling. An obvious concern is if they do start getting in there with a Swampert straight away. This turn they could Secret Spring active, DCE active, and start hitting us for 80. We're not too concerned until they can Super Boost, because we are holding on to 3 max potions, but if we continue to not draw any Pokemon or anything else, it will get a little bit concerning. They're going to grab themselves that Swampert. 80 base damage with that Hydro Pump. They're going to Rare Candy. Obviously, they're going to eventually want to get Solgaleo up because it can recycle Fairy energies, which is pretty important as we're trying to remove energies from them. And they're going to Power Draw away Choice Band. Pretty good option. And let's see what else. They're going to Brooklet. We're actually not playing any water Pokemon, so we can't take advantage of Brooklet Hill. There's the potential to play one Wishy-Washy GX 4 times like this. Wishy-Washy, an additional wall that you can put into the deck. There was even a list in Roanoke that played 1 copy of the Lapras that allows you to rearrange the top 2 cards of your deck, which wouldn't be bad in this spot. They're going to grab Marshtomp, evolving up their Ditto, I imagine. Get the full engine rolling, if they want to. Or they're just getting rid of more cards. Yeah. They still need to get a Ninetales, a Gardevoir up, because they're going to need Secret Spring. Eventually. Second Fair Energy to Swampert, and a big Cynthia to refresh their hand. And it's over to us. We get ourselves a Looker. Let's do it. Let's put a Pokemon down. Do I want to put Mount Coronet in? I guess we can, because our next supporter is always Lusamine. Unless we top deck a Stevens, essentially, is the only thing we could do. Let's flip a Crushing. I think while he doesn't have a Gardevoir set up, that Crushing is still really worthwhile doing. The Crushings become basically irrelevant in this matchup once Gardevoir is set up. So, may as well use them early. It's not like we're just panic playing them. It's like the only time where they're reasonable. So, at least we've drawn into a card that can draw us more cards. And this is the sort of accumulation thing that I was talking about. We like holding these max potions. If we had to Cynthia them back in, we'd be in a weird spot anyway. So it's better to have Looker in times like these. And as I also mentioned... Ooh, Skull Grunt's not bad. As I also mentioned, while we are doing the Lusamine turns, we want to be using our max potions. So let's do that. And pass it over. We don't have to be too scared about a super boost coming down until they start benching our rolls, which should be pretty soon, because they have Power Draw at their side. They have Professor Elm as well. There it is. Yep, 1 Rolts, exactly what they need. They're going to commit to the bench, which is interesting. Trying to... But basically, they've identified that we try and stall these boys. Hydro Pump for 80. Don't feel like the Acerola that good. We need to get ourselves into a better hand, because he will eventually just get Super Boost and start running through us anyway. So the Acerola just sort of prolongs that. We do have the potential to Cold Crush here. I don't think it's bad. When does Cold Crush get better? Cold Crush is exactly better on the Super Boost turn. That's what we're most scared of. So we'll just put another one of these down. There's no reason to not play it. We'll heal, and we'll just pass. Two Guzma gone. Obviously, they'll recycle all these things with Twilight anyway, so we don't even really need to look at his discard pile just yet. We'll start looking once they've Twilighted all the good stuff back. Told you I'd only record 1 game. They decided to evolve Curlier before using Power Draw, which is pretty weird. But hey ho. Ultra Ball, is it Swamp time? Yep. Swamp number 2, hitting the board. Happy days. Thinking about what's Power Draw, if anything. Sometimes when you don't have energy in hand, you don't want to Power Draw if you can't play one. Oh, but they're just going to Lotto anyway. Here we go. Is it Super Boost time? No, because they've... Oh, I can't believe they show... Oh, he still attached it. That's super weird. Well, that's gone. Do I want to use the Articuno? He can't burst damage now. He only has one Guardy, so this is always safe to just throw active. Alley-oop. Do I want to combine it with Skull Grunt? I think Skull Grunt's probably the best thing. But the fact that they Lottoed means they probably don't have anything, right? So I guess I'll just Acerola the back. Spend Cold Crush. Getting rid of, most importantly, that Super Boost. Obviously the rest can be recycled. They haven't put any Solgaleo on their bench, so it's going to be a lot easier for us to beat this list. Maybe it just doesn't play the Solgaleo. Here's Gardevoir. DC Spring. Yep. How many choice bands have they played? They've played 2. It only plays 2, right? Pretty sure it only plays 2. 80 still deals with us, but still. Let's get rid of that DCE. Max Potion. Pass it over. Pretty insane that we drew like all of our max potions with such a thick amount of our deck left. But we would prefer it to be a Lusamine anyway. Right, so still have 2 DCs left. Probably. Yep. Hydro Pump. He'll have to use his last DC to be able to retreat, though. Ah, Steven's Resolve. That's really nice. So I'll spend the... Wait, we're at 90 this turn. I'm pretty sure they don't play 3 bans. Pretty sure. I'm just going to Stevens. They could pay retreat. Fairy, DCE, Guardy. But if they do that, we'll have to get... We have the counter catch already to bring back up this Swampert. And then they'll have no more DCs to retreat it with. So I'm happy to just do this. We want to get our Lusamine. We want to get ourselves... We already have Acerola. I want to recycle Guzma's. We have Faber, but we also need to get rid of energy cards, so Plumeria is probably the one to take. And that gives us access to everything. Perfect. Do I want to actually take a second Steven over? Yeah, I want to increase my hand size a little bit more. We'll do it this way. I want to get ourselves into that big Exodia hand where we just have the options for everything. If they want to go for the Gardevoir knockout for the first 2 prizes of the game, it's fine by me. We can punish it with the counter catcher back into this. Double power drawing, so definitely digging for something. They just concede. Wow. Okay, they saved themselves the effort of going for Twilight to recycle stuff and eventually lose. One more game, I guess. Much harder game if they play Solgaleo. Much harder. But oh well. Let's see what we're up against this time. As I said, real cause for concern. If Bucephalon plays Naga GX, most Malamars are a concern, but winnable. Wow, we start Steven's Resolve, nice. And additionally, Magcargo GX is a problem. This is Zoroark with Weavile because they played units. Probably an easy matchup for us, I would imagine. The only way we lose is because of Judge shenanigans. So I'll probably proactively play my Nest Ball. Don't normally proactively play Nest Balls unless you expect Judges to come down against you. So that's pretty much the win condition that they have here. I think our turn 1 Stevens will be for Steven, Lusamine, and we already have Max Potion E-Hammer in hand. So maybe just something like Acerola. It does play Baby Buzz, so that can start smacking us. Let's do this. They typically do play... well, they are playing Weavile, so we have to be aware of that. But I think it's time for Regigigas to come in. We have... Always important to check your prizes here. Oranguru is prized, which is a little bit awkward. Especially if it's a Zoro deck, they could easily play Oranguru. One of our Crushings. One Nest Ball. We have both our Gladions, which is good. One of our Lusamines. Definitely worth noting. One of our Stevens. Okay. So we'll just Steven's Resolve. And we want to go Steven for Steven. As well as Lusamine. And I think it's another supporter here. I think we're just going Acerola. start accumulating. We have the 2 instant answer cards in E-Hammer and Max Potion already in our hand. So it allows us to play one of them instantly and then Steamer's Resolve to like replenish that one, whilst also getting the second Lusamine in our hand and starting that cycle. Yep, there goes Zorua, Ditto. If they are playing Muck, the Hoopa gets much worse. That's why we went immediately for Regigigas. It also allowed us to insta-play an extra card in Ancient Crystal, which is worth noting when we come up against decks like these. So we actually need to play the Enhanced Hammer straight out the gate and heal. And we will Steamer's Resolve number 2. They have filled their board, so they can't Oranguru unless they play Rainbow Energies in addition to all that to pick up a Pokemon, which is good. So we don't have to worry about Oranguru. We will grab ourselves the instant response cards and grab ourselves that second Lusamine. Sweet. Happy days. We're in the cycle, boys and girls. Let's see what they can do. Zoroark number 1. They're going to discard cards for us. Always happy to see. Again, got to reiterate, the problems start when we start seeing judges. Sometimes 2 copies in lists like these. I posted a list yesterday that played 2 as well as Palpad. They are going to Lichen Rock. Do they want to pull up Reggie? Don't know, but it's good for us because that's 2 retreat, so fine. We're happy that he evolved the Pokemon. It's a 2 retreat that can't attack for 1 attachment. It's good for us. They're going to Cynthia. They attach a basic energy card, which is much better for them. I think this turn is just Acerola pass. This is unfortunately 30 after applying weakness and resistance, so the Buzzwell still does 30 to us, but it's way less damage, obviously. Let's do that. No sight of Muck just yet, but it'll be coming, I imagine. We have to keep our board to 2 abilities because of the threat of Weavile. They're going to trade. And just 30. So we'll Lusamine and get back these 2. Pass. It's all about patience. It's pretty much the game. They're going to Mallow. They've already traded. Maybe they have second Zoroark in hand. Are we going to see them trade into a Muck? Just a Mallow for the following turn. Ooh, drawing a Crushing Hammer is nice. Tails. We're at 120, we're at 150 effective health. So nothing can knock us out. Still. The downside of using Stevens is that they may have Mallowed a Judge to the top. So it may be worth us just Lusamining back the other 2 guys. I think we will do that. Connection being weird might be our lost condition. I hope it fixes itself. Let's pass it over. this improves us a little bit against a judge, if that's how they want to play it. Let's see, they're going to trade away Choice Band. Ultra Ball. Maybe they're just developing their board as much as possible pre-judge. Might make sense. Magtago. No muck. That is pretty good for us. Unless he's just discarding more things. Nope, that's insane for us. Okay. Yep. Hoopa is a good card. So is Regigigas right now. He's doing the work too. Smooth over. The fact that he smoothed over means we're not getting judged. Cool. Happy days. Plumeria off the top is again very helpful. It means I don't have to Steven this turn. It means I can save it. Get rid of those. Is it worth a max potion? How can he... He can play a physical switch. I think we can play it. I think I'll play it simply because I don't have many good bench Pokemon and it's a little bit slow to Stevens. I'd basically have to put down a Shuckle, which isn't the worst, but not the best either. So let's just pop the max potion now. We're getting close to our Lusamine Infinite though. I think I'll Stevens next turn, unless he does anything wacky. And then from there, we'll just be Lusamine chaining. They're going to continue to trade. They did it without smoothing over. Got rid of Acerola, sure. Don't really know what their win condition is. We'll see. We'll see if they play judges. Judge is pretty much their win condition if they don't play like Oranguru and all that other stuff. Wow, just a pass. I like throwing down Coronet because it's another Lusamine target for us and it thins our hand. And we'll just Stevens. I want to get a basic just to have in the hand. We have our other Lusamine already. So I think Skull Grunt is good to take. Just the cards that we want to loop with Lusamine, basically. We already have Plumeria in the discard pile. So it might be Mars or Faber here. Possibly Faber. I'll just... almost missed the timer. Just about made it. Could have been embarrassing. Okay. Energy to Lycanroc. Okay. Sure. Blower our Coronet. Okay. And Ancient Crystal. Of course. And there is Judge. Okay, they do play Judge. They have a fighting chance against us. They've waited a long time for that, but they've eventually done it. They can combine it with Smooth Trade, which is a little bit scary, to be fair. We have drawn into a couple Pokemon, which isn't bad for us. We might need to just keep, as one gets knocked out, put one up until we get ourselves out of this funk. Definitely a fear for this deck. Old Judge. And unfortunately for the deck, people have a lot more reason to play Judge because of all these stage 2 stuffs roaming around. So it indirectly makes Mill a slightly worse deck for Harrogate. Potentially. I'm not saying nothing. We can Guzma and Magcargo if you want to here. How many Guzma have they played? They've played none so far, right? They can always Smooth Trade for it, but I mean, what else are we doing? This will leave our board with only Hoopa if he Guzmas and attacks with this guy. And that's no bad position to be in, because we can go counter catch the Magcargo again. And then they won't be doing much after that, hopefully. If they play one copy of Switch, they could switch into a Buzzwole or Weavile and hit us for 60 or 50. That's about it. So let's see. Yeah, they're just going to concede. Okay, well, at least people know that they don't want to sit here forever, but I hope I showed the power of once we get into that Lusamine loop. We never had anything too drawn out, any game that went that long, but essentially when they're out of Judges, there will be a point where you'll be Lusamining and Stevens resolving until you have every supporter that you want in your hand available to Lusamine cycle. And that should win you the game against a lot of stuff. I think keynotes are which walls to use in which matchups. Gigas, of course, a big one against Blacephalon. Knowing when to use Girafarig is important as well. Obviously, you're sacking prize cards a lot of the time in order to do things, but if they're playing Lusamine, sometimes it's important. In mirror matches, it's definitely worth keeping an eye on what's in their discard pile the whole time, because at any point a get lost could win you the game / lose them the game, which is cool. And knowing which supporters to use at which times. I think potentially in that second game I was a little bit greedy going second Lusamine straight out the gate with this Stevens. I maybe would have been better served getting more energy removal cards and using my second Stevens to get the Lusamine afterwards. So little note there, but obviously patience is a big thing about this deck. Knowing to Stevens into Stevens is pretty much a really big revelation. Don't just Stevens for like immediate stuff that turn. You need to keep using your fake magical ribbon turn by turn if you want to win the game, because that's what sets up your hand so perfectly to have all the answers to everyone. But yeah, super annoying deck. Really hope I don't see it in Harrogate. Probably going to have to tech for it. And you guys probably should as well. The annoying thing is, this deck is good at getting around techs with the Unknown Hand, the Girafarig, and Oranguru of its own. Things just get really awkward. So yeah, I mean, this is not fun to play or play against, but there it is. It's here now. And that's going to be it from me. Yeah, if you're still here, why? But thanks, I guess. And I'll see you in another video.